and Lake Air in Waco. Max Olson, theathletic.com. He's been breaking down a survey of over 1,500 Big 12 fans, those incoming schools, and also the ones who are a part of it right now. Max, thanks for your time. This is fun. I looked at it. It's interesting to see how things change. There were many questions. Was there any answer or two or result or two that maybe popped out more to you than others?
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. It was a very wide-ranging survey. Obviously it was a hell of a year in 21, so I wanted to give Big 12 fans, not just, of the remaining 8, but then also Texas and Oklahoma and of the 4 incoming members, chance to kind of weigh in on the future of the conference, what they're concerned about, what they're expecting in 2022 and beyond. I think the one that maybe got my attention a little more is I threw it out there to fans. If the Big 12 expanded again here, in the few years or in the future, which schools would you prefer? And that was kind of a, choose all that apply, whoever you want. And I put Arizona and Arizona State in there because I was curious just how actually interested, Big 12 fans would be in trying to make a move like that here down the road. And, more than 60% of them would be interested in those schools in terms of the voters. And then after that, in terms of, the G5 candidates that you kind of usually hear about, I was interested to find that more Big 12 fans would actually be interested in Boise State joining the conference than SMU.
Max, Neil Brown did not fare well with his fan base, but neither did Sonny Dykes, and he hasn't coached a game. I guess 6.6 out of 10. Did that surprise you a little bit that Sonny Dykes didn't register well on the excitement meter?
Yeah, we asked these fans, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate how happy you are with your head coach right now? And obviously, if you're like a Cincinnati fan, Luke Fickell's pretty close to 10 in terms of what he's done. And right now at Oklahoma and Texas Tech, both of their new head coaches scored over a 9 because they're, those fan bases obviously, for a lot of reasons are just super fired up about the direction they're seeing so far here in the past few months. And, with Sonny Dykes, I think it's a little bit more wait and see from TCU fans. I don't know if that's the nature of, this guy used to be our rival, our crosstown rival, and now he's switching sides. I think, certainly when I read the comments from those voters, some of them still, have some feelings about, the way things went down with Gary Patterson. And I think part of it is just a lot of people saying, let's just kind of see how things go here. It seems like he's, doing the right things in terms of staff and recruiting and community outreach and all that to fit the job. So I think that I don't think that's an unfair score to give a coach that was just hired, give him a 6 out of 10. But certainly interesting to see how he wins over TCU fans.
And with Neil Brown, Max, not very big votes of confidence here. I mean, he's not entering year one. He's entering, nearly a handful of years now. I mean, how much do you think that temperature's kind of rising in Morgantown? Not necessarily from the AD and all that, but just the fans kind of seeing moves being made around the conference even and just wanting to be excited as well.
Yeah, I think that was interesting to see those results. I mean, obviously, we were able to survey more than 1,500 people, but, it's ultimately, I think it was like less than 100 West Virginia fans. So it's just a small slice of the fan base, maybe not necessarily how everyone feels, but certainly of all the coaches in the conference, I'm not going to say he's on the hot seat yet, but it's year 4, and certainly those fans want to see improvement and progress this year. I think there's, they've lost a lot of players to the portal this offseason. I think some people see that as a red flag. Their offenses have been, a little bit frustrating. They brought in Graham Harrell, which I think is going to help quite a bit. But certainly I think going into year 4, I think the fan base, I feel like they're not, their perception of it is this is not where they think it should be right now. And so certainly it's on him and his staff to really put the pieces together this year and take a big step after disappointing last year.
What a difference a year makes. You had this poll a year ago, and maybe you did. I don't remember for sure, but Dave Aranda right below Luke Fickell as far as happiness with your head coach at number 2, and Dave Aranda at the top, right ahead of Mike Gundy as the most underrated coach. What a difference a year makes.
If we did this last year, and we didn't do this survey last year, but if we did this last year, do you think Baylor fans would have given Dave Aranda like a 5, 4, 6? I mean, what kind of grade do you think he would have earned after year 1?
Wouldn't have been a 9.
I would have said there would have been some patience, but there would have been some absolute anxiety.
Yeah, I think it would have evened out to being right about that in the middle.
Yeah.
Kind of 50-50 on that based on that first year. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, and reading the comments from Baylor fans, certainly, and even as you mentioned, I asked fans who's the most underrated coach in the conference, and there was a lot of votes for Chris Kleiman and Lance Leipold, and a lot for Mike Gundy, but Dave Aranda, received the most from Big 12 fans, and not just from Baylor fans, obviously, but folks around the conference who were just so impressed by the turnaround, and there was even a few readers or a few subscribers who said they think he's on his way to being one of the greats in the profession. And certainly, people, weren't making that assumption a year ago, but it just shows you, kind of the payoff for what they were able to flip here in year two.
There are a couple of polls, a couple of surveys. What is the right size for the college football playoff? 85+% said 8 teams to 12 teams. So that's overwhelming. And then also how they felt about monetizing the NIL. And 86+% all for it, uncomfortable, but okay with it. And I think that's overwhelming as well, obviously, just because of the percentages.
Yeah, it was interesting. I definitely recognize that NIL is a little bit of a lightning rod issue right now across the sport. But, to see Big 12 fans weigh in and 86% of them say they're okay with it, I'm sure there's a wide array of feelings about whether they think this is heading in a good direction or bad direction or whatever. But the 86% indicating they're okay with it and just 10% saying they're not okay with it, I thought was really interesting and shows that fans generally are pretty supportive of student athletes being able to earn more. And even if we have all sorts of, fears about collectives and all the things that are going on here. And then, like you said, with the playoff, found that 95% of Big 12 fans would like to see the playoff expand. And look, part of that, I imagine as this conference gets bigger down the road, you want to feel like you've got guaranteed access to the postseason, stuff like that. But, the majority opinion was leaning 12 over 8, but there were a lot of folks out there who support Big 12 teams that would be okay with 8.
Max, I thought it was interesting also that most people were pretty happy with the 4 that are coming in. There was, a very small percentage that were that didn't like it at all.
Yeah, I think that if you're Bob Bowlesby, you have to be pretty encouraged by. I think that people generally are pretty pleased by what he was able to do. What we found was, it's a pretty strong perception. 81% positive marks right now in terms of, we asked whether they were satisfied by the new members, and only 5% said they were unsatisfied. So, certainly the opinions on that will evolve over time as you start playing them and get to know them better. But I think certainly there was a pretty strong sense among voters that, the Big 12 did the best they could in terms of the targets and they were able to bring in, and B, that I think there's a clear understanding when you watch what Cincinnati and Houston and BYU were able to do last season in football, you feel pretty encouraged that they're going to come in and be ready to compete.
Max, would it be fair to say that even though there's a little bit more confidence because of the moves made, there is still a big blanket of anxiety over the Big 12 fans, not counting OU and Texas folks, just in terms of, I know one fan mentioned the TV deal and how uncertain that looks right now and just kind of getting lost in the shuffle. How much anxiety do you think is there for most Big 12 fans?
Yeah, at the end of the survey, we gave people kind of a space to say, hey, what's your biggest concern for the conference going forward? And, that's obviously there's kind of a laundry list when you think about the next few years here and all the uncertainties and stuff. And out of again, 1,500 people that filled it out, there were more than 300 people who said money. That money was the number one concern they have. The TV deal, the revenue distribution to schools, is the Big 12 going to fall far behind the SEC and Big 10 as people project? And can they stay on par with the Pac-12 and the ACC in terms of the financials? So I think that was really very clearly the number one concern. And then after that, a lot of anxiety about just what will be the reputation and level of respect this conference gets, when it's in its new 12-team setup. Will media and will college football playoff and all those people view this as the worst of Power 5 conferences? Will it still be viewed as a Power 5 conference? There's a lot of concern about that, and then certainly a lot of concern about, will there be more realignment here in a few years, and could the Big 12 potentially be rated again? So, there's a lot of work to be done between Bob Bowlesby and all the ads and presidents and all that to try and you can pat yourself on the back and say we did all the right things at the end of that blind side, but certainly you got to do a lot of work here over the next few years to protect and improve your position.
We just had AD Gene Taylor from Kansas State. They hired Jerome Tang, as you know, and we had him on for that. But we also asked him Big 12 questions as well. And one of them was, do they want to see the 12, once Texas and Oklahoma leave, whenever that is, kind of stabilize a little bit? And will they look down the road at doing more? And, sometimes one of the problems is people try to get too big too early. A lot of leagues that try to take on, like, the former leagues that were pro football leagues other than the NFL. Mm-hmm. And he said, don't say no. Never say never, because you never know about down the road. Do you feel like right now we're like in a year or two bubble where things will slow down again, or do you feel like we might see another wave?
Well, we didn't really see Texas and Oklahoma coming, so I guess we always have to kind of brace for that possibility that, things are going on behind the scenes and people are trying to make moves. But no, I think that when you think about adding new members to the Big 12 again, I think obviously a move like that has to be tied to what is the benefit in terms of the TV rights deal. And so if there's a sense that, going to 14 or more would net them a lot more money, in terms of that next deal with ESPN or Fox or whoever, then, I'm sure that that's something they would take seriously, regardless of who those candidates are. And, I think that's where it kind of comes down to, like, but as you guys know, like, if you're going from 12 to more, then that's more people sharing the pie too. Yep. So you got to have a pretty clear understanding that in terms of, I know people got sick of talking about this in August, but you have to feel like it adds value to the Big 12. And it's just hard to sit here today and predict, how any of those numbers kind of shake out here a few years from now. And so I'm sure that Bob Bowlesby is going to do whatever he's got to do to maximize what they can get out of this next round of negotiations.
Max, would it be fair to say that Oklahoma fans are a little more cautious about entering the SEC as opposed to Texas fans, or do you think that they're probably about on the same page in terms of not only excitement but also a level of concern?
Yeah, it was interesting to, so I threw it out there. I said, hey, 8 months later, what do you guys think of Texas and Oklahoma leaving through the SEC? And I had to read through 1,200 responses to that, which was enjoyable, to say the least. A lot of cursing, guys. Turns out a lot of people still have some pretty strong feelings about that. I think when you go through what the Oklahoma fans and the Texas fans that voted in the survey thought, there's definitely more Oklahoma fans who kind of have mixed emotions about how this played out, and losing the history and the rivalries and stuff like that, and also some just recognition that, like, we've dominated this conference in football. It's going to be a different deal in the SEC. There's going to be growing pains that come with that, and we can't expect to, we have to recognize that you may lose 1 to 4 games a year for a little while in the SEC as you kind of catch up to it. So there was some of that. Certainly there's a lot of excitement about going to the SEC, and even more so among Texas fans. I think the ones that hold, there are some that, would rather be in the Big 12 and maybe don't love what's going on. But, by and large, the Texas fans that I heard from, very excited about it, fired up, can't wait. Like, they want it to happen as soon as possible. And a lot of kind of like defensive answers about, well, we had to, this is inevitable. This was, something that, you have to do what you have to do in terms of money and all that. And certainly more so among the Texas fans than the Oklahoma fans, not many regrets about what went down that summer.
Well, that was a tough decision for Joe and Tahlequah to make,
Well, and Max, if you ask most Texas fans, they've ignored what's happened since 2005 anyway. So going to the SEC is, it's 2006, right? Let's go.
No comment. No, I'm kidding. Look, I get it. I mean, I get that, certainly when you read the response to the survey from Texas fans, Oklahoma fans, like, they don't think very highly of Bob Bowlesby. They don't think very highly of the conference now. You have to kind of, like, in your head, have all these justifications for why you're making this move, even though a lot of people get that, if any school had that opportunity, they'd take it. But, it's funny. The Oklahoma fans were a little more sentimental about the Big 12, and the Texas fans, not so much.
Max, this is off topic to your story, but it was one of the more interesting stories that I saw over the last couple of weeks. The unnamed school and quarterback and the $8 million NIL deal. I know that people have kind of pointed arrows on what school they think it is and who that quarterback is and all of that. But, we've seen other deals here and there. But just your thoughts on kind of that story, the response it got, and just the way you continue to see NIL sort of progress forward.
Yeah, it's funny. Our Stuart Mandel was the one who broke that story. And to be totally honest, I think I know who it is, but I actually haven't asked to, and he hasn't told me. And, I think you've seen a lot of people connect the dots that it's Tennessee's, newest quarterback commit that just happened this week. And, whether it's him or not, I think it's more interesting just in terms of, the specifics of what kind of money this player is going to make. It's maybe not necessarily as interesting as is this going to be kind of the arms race now, and how many schools out there can truly say we can put together these kind of packages for the best recruits in the country. And, certainly for schools like Tennessee, if you're going to make this move, and certainly they've, pounded their chest quite a bit that they're going to be one of the best out there when it comes to collectives, then I'm fascinated to see, what kind of recruiting class you can build. If you're, what is the best recruiting class that money can buy? What does it look like? And then what are you able to do as a program if you get those players? And how long does it take for Josh Heupel and his staff to turn it around? I think it's fascinating to see the ones that are out there that are making these moves, that are willing to cut big checks to get players right now. I know there's a lot of angst about, what direction the sport's heading in, but, certainly you want to see, is this actually going to pay off for them? And, as we saw a few years ago, Tennessee was recruiting at a top 10 level under Jeremy Pruitt, and all those players transferred. So, I mean, even if you get those guys in, you got to get it, you, as a program, you have to stay out of trouble, and you have to keep them in development.
Max, thank you, man. Appreciate it. Great stuff with the survey. That was fun to read today. Max Olson, theathletic.com, with us Thursdays at 4 o'clock, Sicem 365 Radio. We'll have Mickey Spagnuolo around the corner on his thoughts on the NFL week that was. Another one that was wild and crazy. Craig's off the radar. John Gallagher, the head coach at Hartford, will join us at 5 to break down all of the Sweet 16 matchups tonight and tomorrow. Max
mentioned it. We didn't really follow up on it, but Big 12 fans preferring Memphis over SMU, in that poll, and SMU not necessarily the popular pick. That's still the one to me that we know when they talked about the re-expansion and what that next wave could look like. That was the one school, if you remember, I was kind of hung up on because even when we got the explanation, I was like, okay, I get it. It's about potential, not about right now. But still, that's one of those schools that I do think you start to get the feeling of how much are we watering this down? Because with all due respect to SMU, they already have similar schools that are just slightly larger in Baylor and TCU. Like, how much does it help you to have a third school in the state of Texas, all within a 2-hour drive of each other, that are similar? I just don't know how that boosts you outside of what the reasoning was, which was this is what SMU could potentially turn into. So, if you want to go on a hope and a prayer and feel like that, I mean, I guess that's kind of what you're doing with everybody, but I guess I'm not surprised to see that in the poll.
Go back and listen to our interview with Rick Hart, and he, of course, that's his job, is to sell them, but I thought he made some pretty good points. That's been several weeks ago, but and he understands the weaknesses and what the concerns would be.
But that's I think the philosophy going forward for the Big 12 when you expand with the schools they even have now, even though UCF and Houston, UCF in particular is a massive, gigantic, huge school student body wise. They have to look at what can grow, and because otherwise you're not. You're gonna sit there in a room and argue over who's the biggest and who's the biggest now. You have to see what your cash crop could be, and that's what they have to do, because it is a bit of a wing and a prayer on a lot of these, Craig. The University of Houston's really good at a lot of things, and it's in a major metropolitan market, but nothing has happened in its history to make it super valuable until maybe right now.
They got a hell of a president right now.
Those two things have to work out, but it's a big risk.
Yeah. And the list included those Arizona schools, of course, and I think both of them would be gems if you added them. And that's not to say the Pac-12 will fall apart. That was just go ahead and include them. Memphis, Boise State, SMU, and Colorado State would be the next 4. USF was right below San Diego State, but those are some schools. We've had some of you bring up San Diego State. We've had you bring up the academies.
UNLV.
UNLV. We've had you bring up, but these are some that we've discussed when we've also kind of tried to stay not so much ahead of the curve, but also forecasting what could be down the road. There's nobody on that list that was a surprise. We had some of you even bring up Colorado State. They've got some things they got to take care of there. They're not apparently on the radar, but I'm not surprised their name is on there. I would personally and selfishly love San Diego State. I would love to go cover a game. I love San Diego and miss it. I haven't been there in a long time since covering the what was it, the Holiday Bowl, back when they played UCLA and smoked them with only 13 passes thrown in that game. When we come back, Mickey Spagnola